So we've got a brand new event in Pokemon TCG, and it is the WinStreak event. They have announced this previously about a week or so ago, and I wanted to kind of give a little go on it before we really try to understand on how do you get the 5 wins in a row to be able to get the gold emblem. That's pretty much what everybody's doing. You got to get the 5 wins consecutively, so that's going to require a little bit of strategy and also a certain type of deck. So today we're going to go through all of the decks, kind of just see which one I believe is going to be the most consistent, because as we know in the TCG, there's definitely been decks that are better than others, or at least have been more introduced in tournaments. So let's go over to Pokemon Meta. This is a great chance to have a look at a lot of the top decks that are updated pretty much daily by the looks of it. We've got tournaments. They've now added a 5-win streak in here as well. These are just going to be everything that is being utilized at this moment in time. So this was updated, I believe it said 11 hours ago. So let's kind of go through, because when you're looking at a 5-win streak, it's great if we say Pika and Mewtwo are the most powerful decks we've seen. But what you want is the most consistent deck. And sometimes, I'm not saying that it isn't for these two, which we'll divulge into a little bit more, is the fact that you don't want to rely on coin flips a lot of the time. You don't want to maybe go for a 3-star evolution, or 3-stage evolution that is, because setting it up is going to be different. You're going to run into a lot of RNG, maybe you don't pull very well, you don't get the coin flips that you want, and that can become a little bit challenging towards the 3 and 4 wins. As you could probably imagine, the Mewtwo and Pika should wipe the floor with a 2-win very comfortably. But if then you come up against a Wigglytuff deck, which is more than powerful enough to actually get it, and it gets all the coin flips you need. Mewtwo's asleep for 5 rounds, and then you knock out another Mewtwo, and then suddenly you've just not got the deck that you need. So there is going to be a certain strategic value that you can go with this. So for instance, with the Wigglytuff deck, the way that you'd kind of use this is obviously by using your poison, then bringing in Koga to bring him out, get Wigglytuff in to keep him asleep, you're hitting the 80 still as well. There's a lot that can go wrong, and even if you just throw in Jigglypuff and manage to get the Sing straight off the bat, this is not necessarily a deck I would personally use for a 5-win streak, but you've always got to be very wary of a deck that can do this. If Jigglypuff goes in first, they have the second turn, they Sing, you're asleep, and suddenly you're asleep for 3-4 rounds, Wigglytuff starts bringing in an 80 and keeping you asleep. There's not a lot you can do. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the absolute game changer. I can't imagine there's going to be hundreds of people running this deck, but there is always possibilities of a few. We then throw into, like we said, with the multiple deck, you have got the either Charizard or what do they call it? It's like Charcanine or Arcamander or something like that. I've heard someone say, and I can't remember who now, but it's like the Moltres, Charmander, and also Growlithe deck, where you are building up a Charizard. Arcanine can come in pretty quickly with 3 energies, and then you've got Moltres hopefully at the start to be able to bring in that Inferno Dance. If you manage to either get the very good flips from this, as well as getting Moltres in first, you then either get a Growlithe Arcanine pairing or a Charmander Charmeleon pairing, you're looking pretty well off the bat. Now, the only problem with this deck I have at the moment is there is a lot of water decks going. And the biggest one we've seen to kind of combat this one specifically, as well as then just not having the pulls, is going to be the Greninja deck. It's personally one that I've been utilizing quite a lot. Not that sort of deck, to be honest. Let's go back and see if there is a better one. Melmetal. I mean, it's possible. Mainly the thing that I'm looking at is the Articuno EX, the normal Articuno, and the 2 Greninjas. They're going to be the kind of the bog standard of this deck that really works. I'm assuming someone's pairing with a Mewtwo as well. I don't know if I'd quite do that, because obviously then you're hoping for at least the 2 Psychic. Where is the one that I would personally go with? Everybody's pairing it with a bit of different as well, which I suppose you could do, because realistically the Greninja doesn't need the energies. You could swap out them energies and just go for, kind of like we said, with the Psychic energy instead. Kangaskhan is going to be a cracking one if you get the RNG for the lovely flips, because Greninja's the bench. That's kind of what you want. You want a Froakie coming out second, or at least a second basic Pokemon you can put in. Obviously Mewtwo can go in straight away, and also they're going to be utilizing their Sing just as a basis just to kind of keep all your basics in there. It's a possibility to now start to kind of mix decks. I think it's one big thing that we've got at the moment is we are a lot much like, that's a fire deck, that's an electric deck, that's a psychic deck, when realistically, when it comes to the actual TCG for years now, it's a lot of mix, it's a lot of different stuff, and I think the Greninja deck on its basic premise is a very consistent deck, but again, you've got to hope that you manage to consistently get that free tier evolution. Now, getting it once or twice is more than fine, but I guarantee by 5 wins, you might not pull it all straight away, and that sometimes can be a little bit more of the problem. Then obviously we'll look at something like the Articuno deck. Obviously this one is, okay, this is the one that I use with an actual base Articuno as well as almost like a wall. It will only give you a 1 damage, and you've kind of got to hope for the Misty. That's the only problem with this deck, is you've got multiple variables that could go wrong, let alone going against a Pika that gives you the weakness. We then have to hope either Misty does give you the turns, you either then get Articuno out first, you then have to have Frogadier and Greninja and Froakie all out relatively quickly. It's a very, very difficult deck for the consistent value. So that one for me is a great one if you want to try it out. I think in terms of just battle to battle concept, is a brilliant, brilliant deck you can use. Same with the Dragonite. Very nice if you can set it up. Like there's very few things that can go against it. I do like the Kangaskhan as well. You can even throw in a little bit of a Jigglypuff to be able to set you up for this, because once you get to that Draco Meteor, it's a cracking Pokemon. Like you are pretty much done unless you can one bomb it, which again is going to be difficult without, say for instance, going against a Mewtwo. If you wait until you get to the Dragonite, you need a guard already set up. You need then to be able to have either a what is he called? I can't remember what it's called. Giovanni. I was going to say there was definitely one. Giovanni to be able to do the 10 extra damage, and then you could do the 160 to knock it out straight away. There's got to be a lot of things that go wrong on your side to be able to kind of let Dragonite go in. And as you can see, when we look at the top cards, these are going to be the easiest ones. Now, obviously, every other deck, we look at a Venusaur, it's going to have that same problems, because obviously you need to be able to kind of be hitting whilst kind of leveling up, and the Starmie sort of deck is going to be fantastic with that. If you are looking like a Starmie, you're looking at where are we going? Let's find a different one. Preferably not an Articuno, even though Starmie works really well with a double energy rather than necessarily going triple. If we go top cards, can we filter by color? Not colorless, we want water. Can we do that? Perfect. So obviously when we're looking at an Articuno, that's always number 1. Starmie is going to be a great one to start hitting, as well as something like a Golduck, because it's very easy to set up. It's a two-stage evolution. Obviously you've got no support cards with Psyduck, which sometimes can be very handy, but you want to make sure you've got that Golduck coming in straight away. Blastoise, again, the free tier evolutions, I'm not necessarily a big fan of, purely on the fact that if it goes wrong on number 4, you're going to be just very, very annoyed at it. Krabby, again, it's going for the free. It's requiring a flip of the head. So, again, whether you'd want that or not is going to be up to you. So, I'd say water probably isn't my first go-to shout here. We've saw with a lot of the fire decks as well, if we go to the top cards, you've obviously got the likes of Rapidash, and also then you have got yourselves a Ponyta. If you're running, say, for instance, a Magmar, Ponyta, and also Vulpix deck, it's very quick to get going, because that's the two ways you can go about it. Setting up a deck with hopefully some attack going into it, hence why Mewtwo's really good. Or you go for a very consistent non-EX deck that requires 3 Pokemon to go, and pray that you manage to get Mewtwo out or get Pikachu out before he even gets to the attack. For instance, with obviously Ninetales, you discard an energy, but you do 90. The only problem is the HP is really low, so Pikachu can one-bomb it in that sense. Obviously, you've got Rapidash without a Giovanni. Obviously, Rapidash can do the damage as well. You've always got to watch out for water Pokemon. With the lower HP, that's going to be potential issues, but you could potentially have an Arcanine in the back, potentially, like, as a last resort. You could throw that out at 2 points to them, and then see if you could wipe the floor with the rest of it. That's always a possibility, which I think works really well. But it will always come back, unfortunately, because you have got the Primeape. Primeape Marowak, great deck, but it does require, a lot of the time, especially with Marowak, a flip of the coin. If you do manage to get the double on him, then obviously you do get to take Mewtwo out in one, but you are already dealing the weakness as well. With Mewtwo, he'll be hitting 70 on Primeape, and he'll hit 100 back on the second one if you manage to hit first, and he'll still have 10 left without the Giovanni. So it's all about the strategic nature of it, and that's really where it comes to the most consistent two decks across tournaments. They've won tournaments. This is the reason why they are very, very easy to set up, and then also a very nice deck to be able to get a good amount of speed behind it. Now, obviously, with Pikachu, there's a few ways you can set it up. Most of the time, all of the trainers are going to be the same, but if you have a look at a solid electric deck, which is pretty much all it's going to be, they've put it lightning. Obviously with this, you've got the Pikachu, which is the number one. Zapdos would be second up on there, and that's really all you need to kind of start with. Having a Zebra Striker is going to be quite a nice one. We've got this one for the Paralyzed sort of side, which can lead to one going down, but you could set your Pikachu up by then. The only problem you have, for instance, with a Pikachu is the fact that you need bench Pokemon as well. So you need to be getting them Pokeballs in very, very quickly and not losing out on your Pokemon straight away. Zapdos, again, a very hard hitter. With the flip of 4 coins, it's very unlikely that you don't get at least one head, so you're normally always doing damage, but to get to that free energy, that's enough to get Mewtwo pretty much there. It's enough to get a lot of Pokemon in a fighting sort of zone, so you've always got to be very wary. You could obviously go for the wall of Zapdos in there as well. Always a nice one if you wanted to go for the 100 HP and also not be hit out by 2 Pokemon straight away. You could obviously go for that and then go for a Zebra Striker, then bring in a Zapdos if you didn't want to use the Pikachu, but it is going to be a very consistent deck. But for me personally, it is a little bit sweaty. It's going to be the meta in this. Unless you go against it, it's probably best to join it in the Mewtwo deck. It's a very easy deck to set up. It's got a great wall, it's got great attacks on the build-up, and then also you're just requiring a bit of Guadavir, which isn't necessarily, yes, I always say about the free stage evolutions, but it's a very nice one to get in there, but Mewtwo can handle it on its own if needed. If you manage to wall out the Mewtwo, you then get an EX setup. You could then potentially already get most of Rolt's set up as well. That mixed in with the Pokeball, the Draw 2s, as well as then utilizing the X speeds and potion. You could even potentially wall out as much of Mewtwo as possible, swap him over to one Mewtwo EX, and then potentially let that one down, then get the next Mewtwo in. It gives you a lot of time to be able to get the guard in. That's just a personal preference with it. I think most of these decks can potentially do it, like we've got the 5 win streaks. Most of these decks on a good streak can do it, but there's a lot that you've got to always factor in when it comes to flip coins, when it comes to getting that free stage evolution. I think going with the masses of how powerful decks are, what are used in tournaments consistently to get into first place, which is always going to be the Mewtwo first and then the Pikachu. Obviously, both of them have their very strong points and also negatives as well, but they are the strongest decks for a reason. So let me know if you've managed to get going. I've managed 2 wins so far. We've only started it this morning, so I'll be up to news once we get them 5 wins, and then hopefully we do get trading very, very soon. Let me know how you're getting on. Peace.